I work quite a bit in implementation, so I'm going to start just by explaining some of the ways to get your parents on board, and then some of the system setup practices you'll want to follow right when you're getting started, and then Bradley will take it from there to go through some best practices once you do have those parents on board, and some successful stories from what we've seen so far.
And I feel like the technical stuff that you get to do, thank you for that, are some of the biggest questions, because we can bring in parents in so many different ways, and there are a lot of different settings that impact parents that are in different parts of the platform. And those, I think, are some of those decisions many of you may have already made, or maybe I sort of made them when you first were implemented, but didn't really go back and look at them. And for those of you who haven't brought in parents yet, this first section I think will be probably the biggest for them. Is just, we have so many ways to get parents in. What is the best way? Cool. So we will turn off our webcams here so you can see our screen the full way. We'll come back to you in a little bit. I'm going to monitor these questions over here.
All right. So before we actually get started about options for creating accounts, we just want to visit very quickly and review the difference between roles and associations. So this will be pretty important to differentiate, and it's something that's unique to the parent role. So we're now looking at this admin account screen, so this should look pretty familiar to most of you. And just to kind of review, if we go over to Manage Users, and down to roles, we've got that parent role set up. And just as a reminder, a role is really just a category of permissions on the platform. It's just a way to categorize what different groups can see and do. So you've got your faculty role, your student role, and your parent roles, and you can set permissions for each of them. When you do create those parent accounts, what you haven't done yet is make that association to the child, which is, of course, probably the biggest part of bringing parents on. So I do just want to point that out. In the Parents and Advisors tab, you'll notice that over here you've got the option to actually create a parent association. So this page we're actually looking at all of our users in different roles. So once you do create those accounts for parents, you also need to make that association. So sometimes that can be a two-step process. So why don't we get started with thinking about your different options for creating these accounts, and then also making those associations to children so that the parents can actually view what their children are doing on Schoology. So the first option is to actually import this parent data into Schoology. And this is sort of a two-step process. First, you create those accounts, and secondly, you create those associations. So maybe some of you have been to this import tab before. You'll actually remain on this this first users tab, and what you would need is just a file that includes all of the data that we need to create an account. So just like for teachers or students, you would need the same required fields for your parents. So if you're on this page, you can actually scroll through to this top box, and any of those asterisk items are required, and double asterisk indicates either or. So we would need a first name, a last name, either a username or an email address for those parents, a role, and a school.
Talk to me a little bit about the unique ID and why that is sometimes fine for people and sometimes a challenge.
Yeah, so I think the unique ID can be challenging for the parent role specifically, and not only the unique ID, but all of the data is likely coming from your student information system. And I know from the schools I've worked with, parent data isn't always up to date, and it's not always the cleanest data that they have. It's not quite kept up the way student and teacher data is. So that some schools can run into roadblocks here with actually creating this file and making it a clean, nice file to work with. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Bradley?
I just chatted that very question out to the audience to see what people had to say about that. Absolutely, having that, I think I hear the same thing, Kira, is people having correct parent or guardian data in their SIS can be a challenge. Not only with the data and having it in a system that has some kind of unique identifier, but also having an accurate email address to port in. The good news is that after we look at that, we're going to be looking at an alternate method of bringing parents in using access codes. But if you do have formalized data, I think this is a great way to go, but it's good to also know before you get started what the limitations might be and to know that there are some other options as well.
Exactly. So if you are feeling pretty good about your data, your parent data, and you think this would be a pretty good option to create this file, you can go ahead and import that. You attach the file here, and you can import it right on this page. So what that will do is actually create these parent accounts. So when you go to Manage Users, you can now filter by that parent role, and you would be able to see all of these accounts that you just created with the same data that was in the files. What you have not done yet is create that association I was just talking about to the children. So at that point, we've taken that first step. When those parents log in, they won't see their children yet. We need to tell Schoology which children belong to which parents or guardians. So the second step with this process is to come into Manage Users and over to this Parents Advisors tab. And this.
Yeah, it's funny, this tab. I was talking to someone the other day, and they're looking at this saying, I don't think these are my parents. I went to the Parents tab and I don't see my parents. So this goes back to exactly what you're showing here, the idea of the difference between a person like a user and the association that user has to another user. And here we see both the associations to parents, which we're talking about today, but I know we have a couple of higher ed people on as well, but this is the exact same technique you would use for setting up advisors.
Yep, exactly. Same kind of idea with advisors. You're also setting up associations. So we're looking at this page here. It is all roles. We're looking at all of our roles. Keep in mind, too, you can always use this filter tool to up these users per page to several hundred if you want to take a look at a bigger view. But you are looking at all roles on this page. And one quick way to make that association pretty intuitive is just to click on that parent. So if I did want to make Sierra, for example, this parent, associated to Brittany, this student here, you could just type in her name and then save those changes. And the next time Sierra logs into her parent account, she'll also be able to go to this drop-down arrow and toggle over to her child, Brittany's account, to take a look at her courses and everything that Brittany sees as a student.
When we were setting this up, Kira, you mentioned that doing just this ad hoc, of course it's one at a time, but really not a bad way to test out the parent portal to begin with and just to get a feeling for how it looks. Some people have told me that they've gone through here and set up the teachers at the school who are also parents through this method so they could kind of pilot the parent portal and test it out, get a feeling for it, and advise on anything that they felt that parents would need to know before doing a full rollout. So I like that there's this ad hoc method here in this area.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know I've worked with a lot of schools who do choose to roll out to parents in that way so that you have that kind of preview from your teachers. And just like Bradley was saying, you'll notice anyone can be a parent. Anyone can have this association set up. you don't have to be in the parent role. So that's definitely an option. If you have teachers, you can make that association here. But you're probably thinking this is a very manual process, one by one. I'm not going to go in and type in the names of each of my parents. This is a great option if you do want to consider something more in a one-off case, like we were just describing. If you do choose to import this parent data, what you will probably want to do is also import a CSV file of those associations. So what this will look like is a very simple 2-column file. In one column would be the unique ID of that parent, and in the next column would be the unique ID of the student that they are tied to. So that is definitely the first option for creating these parent accounts and associations to children, is importing a file for parent data to create the account, and then importing a file over here under the Parents Advisors tab to make that association to their children.
So just a two-column file, right? A CSV file?
That is correct.
Very cool. So we've looked at this way to load parents in bulk and to make these associations. Fair amount of data work. I imagine that there is an easier way, maybe a way that a teacher could do it themselves. A parent could sign up for their own account.
Yep. So that would be option 2. And there might be people out there who have student information systems, and you may notice the option to sync parent data. Same idea as this import process. You're going to have to be aware of how clean that data is in your student information system. So I just want to throw that out there. I know a lot of people are using SunGuard and Skyward with that option.
Very cool.
So let's get to the second option, which is just like Bradley was describing, sort of giving the parents the ability to create the accounts themselves and manage them themselves. So right in the same area, we're in Manage Users, Parents Advisors. This next category is Parent Access Codes. So this option will allow you to download a CSV file, and for each student, you'll have a code for that student that you can distribute out to your parents, and they can take this code, go to app.schoology.com, and actually create an account themselves. So of all of the schools I've worked with and implemented and rolled out parents to, I would say this tends to be the most common practice, to allow parents to take that access code and actually create an account themselves. They can create it with an email address and manage their own password. So this does tend to work pretty well. So this is the admin level ability you can download for every student at this level.
And then after we download that, what happens with those access codes? Well, that could go a few different ways. Most people would probably do a mail merge and enter that access code into something like a letter that goes home. And to that end, Kira, you've reminded me that we have some really good guides in our Help Center that outline some of that stuff. I'll put those in chat here.
Yeah, I definitely recommend checking out those resources that we already have built out. We have letters home to parents. We have instructions on how to set up an account and how to use an access code to create an account. And we also have a little welcome to Schoology document that you're welcome to use and modify to fit your needs. So I definitely recommend, if you're thinking about this access codes route, to take a look at those and think about how you can use those to get the word out to parents and get clear messaging back home.
Now, this has been a pretty awesome exploration to all those system tools and ways to do all of this in bulk. I'll throw out another strategy along that same idea of the access codes. Now, for those of you who haven't seen this, let me go out to a different browser here. once we get that access code, oops, wrong website, Schoology.com, sign up, and then there's the option to select parent, and that's where the access code goes in case you haven't seen that. The access code that you are putting in that letter home, or etc. Now, the other way to look at this outside of all of the bulk features, which I do like, is having this, the distribution of access codes be teacher driven. So if I look at my teacher account here, here's Kylie Starr, she's a teacher in this course. We pop into her social sciences course, into her members tab, and notice we have a link to download parent access codes as well. And that gives her a CSV file that she can also open. Let me bring that over and preview it for you. Okay. So all the students are listed and there's a parent access code. Now, here is a bit of trivia. I have some pretty seasoned experts on the line here, including my pal Rod Kirby. But here's a trivia. Let's see if you guys can get this. If I am Kylie Starr and I'm just gung-ho, I went to this webinar, hey, we're doing parents, I just download that and give it to all of my students, or my students give their parents, and they're getting in here. Now, I've just done this on my own accord. I haven't really necessarily coordinated with anyone. Any danger in just going gung-ho with this? Is it totally fine for me to do this on my own? Any problems I might run into?
Yeah, that's a great point, Bradley, because you'll notice that just in that last page where you're looking at, the parent is using their code to create an account to view their child's activity. And that's not limited in the course. That access code is the parent's one access code. It's not limited to that course. So once that access code is given out to the parent, that parent is then able to view everything that their child's doing on Schoology. So although Kylie Starr, this teacher, might be ready and comfortable rolling out to her parents, you know, the teacher next door might not quite be using Schoology yet, or might still be getting set up, and we definitely recommend rolling out to parents when most of your teachers are on board, up and running, and comfortable and ready to have that parent view. So that's definitely one thing to keep in mind. There's one access code, and that gives them access to all courses, not just the one coming from this course.
And do I need a different access code, or do I need to somehow regenerate this for the mom, the grandmother, the guardian, the dad? Do I need different access codes for those people?
Nope. Access code will create that association to the student.
Great, so it can be used by all those different people. That's great.
Right.
Awesome. So I would just give this out, and notice, I would say, talking to support, this doesn't happen a lot in Schoology Enterprise, but our support team has mentioned that in the basic version of Schoology, for those of you who came from basic, many parents will see this access code and join the course with that. But the problem is that's going to make them a student in the course. That's not what we want. They'll actually be able to take quizzes and see student names and things like that. We want parent access codes. And notice that they have a different format. We have 3 buckets of numbers separated by dashes here. Student access codes are just 2 buckets of numbers. So it's really easy to see on site if someone is using the correct access code or not in this situation. Now, Kira, before I know, the next thing we want to look at are the various permissions surrounding what controls the parent view. But how about we take a quick tour of the parent interface? How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Great, let me pop over to one we already have loaded. Okay, here we are. I am right now logged in as Melanie Garcia. She's the parent of both Angela and Lincoln in this example. So when she logs in, she will see all of her children. So notice that not only can I be connected to Angela, I can actually be connected to Lincoln as well. I can toggle between both of their Schoology views, and I get an extra. If you have more than one child, you get an extra drop down here, so you can just focus in on one of them or see both of their information. I have a new area over here that you wouldn't see in the teacher or student view of just recent assignment grades and quizzes that have been posted since the last time I logged in, and I can jump directly into these. Now, I just clicked into a discussion in the course. Now, one thing all of you may be thinking about right now is, wait a second, if Schoology is a very social platform, if my parents can now get into the courses, couldn't they be exposed to too much information about the students who are not their children? Well, notice as I scroll down here, people are listed as anonymous, and their pictures are taken out as well. So I can follow along with the conversation, I can see what's happening, and I can see specifically what my child is posting, but everyone else is hidden from view. So I would actually only see my child, and I would also see any posts that the teacher has made in the course as well. So there's this nice balance of allowing the parent or guardian to see a lot of this information while protecting everyone else's privacy. Now, I can go through all of her courses, I can flip through the different students, and I can also see what groups they're in and what's happening within those groups as well. But again, depending on the privacy settings, certain information will be removed. Another thing I really like about the parent view is whether I'm in a group or a course, there is a direct link here to message the administrators or the teachers of those courses as well. I love that. And not only am I in that view to see what they're doing, I can also use Schoology myself, and just as a user myself, can also join groups like the PTA. We'll look at that a little bit more later in this presentation. But while I'm here, the last thing I want to show you while we're in this view is while you're looking at a student's view, we can select this downward arrow where our account settings are, click on notifications, and for instance, set up a daily or weekly email digest. So really, if I don't want to be logging into Schoology all the time to find out what Angela is up to or find out what her homework is, I can actually set up a daily email that comes to me at 5 o'clock every day that tells me what's happened in Schoology that day. And I can also turn on this super-powered feature, I'll call that, so I can get an immediate notification if there's any overdue material happening in the class as well. Okay, so we just looked at some of those things like the email digest, we looked at grades. Kira, how is all of that managed? Because it really all funnels back down to this system administrator here, right?
Right, so there are a few system settings and permissions you will want to look at as an admin when you're rolling out to parents. So we'll take a quick look at these, and if you have already rolled out to parents, this might be a good review in case you hadn't taken a look at this earlier. Our parent permissions are in a few different places. So the first one I want to take a look at is under Manage Users and Permissions. Sort of just a reminder, you will want to come in here and take a look at the permissions you have set for that parent role so that you can really control everything that anyone in the parent role is able to see and do. Most of these are pretty straightforward. The one that I do want to point out that really applies to parents most frequently is this emails permission that we're looking at here. So if you have a custom subdomain or a custom domain set up, and you also have a single sign-on process set up that your parents would not be involved in. So if, for example, you have Google single sign-on set up, but your parents don't have school Gmail accounts or Google accounts, this will apply to you. This permission, if you turn it on, in all of those notifications we were just taking a look at, email links coming from Schoology, they will actually include this link to go to app.schoology.com to log in for those parents, rather than directing them to your custom domain or subdomain, where they won't be able to log in if you have single sign-on set up. So that is one permission you'll want to consider if you've got those custom subdomain or domain set up, which most enterprise accounts do, and you've got single sign-on set up as well.
So we had, Kira, remember this morning we had that interesting conversation. It came from a question that was about that restriction of parents logging in through the custom domain, about that restriction, the relationship between the custom domain and the SSO.
Right.
And that it was, so some people were confused about that this morning, that the reason why we're bringing them to app.schoology.com is because it's not necessarily that they can't log into the custom domain, it's that the custom domain is already redirecting to Google SSO or to LDAP, and they aren't in those systems. It's really the redirection that is the problem, and then they can get lost and are not.
Exactly.
And they'll start using the password that they used to set up their account with the access code, but they won't realize they're entering it into your LDAP page.
Yep, so especially just for clear communication, and especially if your parents are using emails and accounts that they've set up, going to app.schoology.com is going to be a simple, clear way for them to log in. So we would just want in this permissions page to keep that communication clear on any notification emails going back to those parents.
Cool.
Let's jump to system settings next. If you are going to be using access codes, you'll want to make sure that this enable parent access codes permission is turned on. And then you can head to the bottom of this page. There are quite a few important parent permissions set up here, namely this parent access area. So this is where you're able to control whether or not those parents can view their child's submissions, their grades, attendance, and mastery grades. So if, for example, you're not using mastery grades, you probably can turn that off so that they don't see that option. If you don't want parents viewing grades, you can turn this off. And probably what's somewhat common is if you don't want parents to be able to view their children's submissions, any assignment that they've done, homework, essay, if you don't actually want the parents to be able to go in and view that, you can control that permission here.
And I find that's pretty common, that will be disabled unless they're only using the Schoology parent portal for elementary school.
Yeah, definitely. I was just thinking, I was teaching junior English, and there would often be pretty personal topics that I don't think my junior students would necessarily be as open if they knew that their parents were going to be reading that. So that's just something to consider.
Absolutely. And around this area, I know many of you don't use the Schoology attendance feature because the attendance goes in the SIS. That, again, would probably be something you turn off here. But you might leave on mastery if you were starting to track the Common Core and use those rubrics and things like that. Now, here's a question. While we're on the topic of grades, what if I wanted or is okay for my parents to see the students' ongoing grades, but I really didn't want them to see the overall scores because, you know, I've spent years training my parents to log into the SIS to see their overall score. Is there any nuance here?
Yeah, that is a great question, and one that comes up quite frequently, and not only just for the parent conversation, but also for teachers communicating with their students. If the official overall gradebook is going to be held in the student information system, your teachers can actually control that view. So if we go to the gradebook and to grade setup, at the bottom of this grade setup page, the teachers do have that ability to hide overall grades. So that way, parents and students alike can continue to submit their assignments and receive grades on those, and students and parents can view those grades on individual assignments. But if you're worried about that consistency of the overall grade, you can always hide the overall grade in the course itself. So that might be something that you will want to consider communicating to your teachers if they aren't already doing that, or if they aren't aware of this permission that they can control. So it's in gradebook, grade setup, right down at the bottom. Let's head back to the permission setting. There are only a few more, and then Bradley will get into all the fun activities for those of you who already have parent accounts set up. We can take a look at what you do once you do have your parents in the system. So we took a look at the system settings. The last place you'll want to go is to this privacy overrides. So Bradley was just showing us that view of parents, and one of the great features is that you can make other students who aren't the child of that parent or guardian anonymous. It makes their picture and their name anonymous so that their identity is protected. You can go one step further here and actually hide those overall comments and posts that are made by other students altogether. So that's kind of one step up in privacy. And then you can, of course, lock these settings so that your teachers can't make adjustments other than what you've set here. So it's pretty common, at least, to select this anonymous member names permission, and some schools definitely do go a step further and hide the comments and posts. The caveat there is that if they're trying to follow a discussion, they won't be able to follow the discussion quite as well if they can't see what others are saying. So another little tidbit to consider.
That's right. So, Kara, I had one question here, and I'm wondering if we can go back to it. We
Sure.
showed, when I went into the parent account itself, we looked at the email digest notifications. Can we revisit where we set that up in our system settings? If we wanted to set up the email digest system-wide.
Yep, good point. So back on this system settings page, we might have skipped over this a little bit down at the bottom. You're controlling these major parent access permissions, and just below at the admin level, you can set up the default settings for parents to receive this email digest.
And when we were preparing for this, we did some double checking on this particular setting. This is a little tricky here, that when you turn this on, it won't turn on email digest settings for all of your parents who are already in the school. Generally, if someone has an account setting or notification setting, Schoology doesn't change that if they've already exist, because we don't want to change a setting that someone may have already tailored. But if you set this up here before you import parents or before they use those access codes, then this digest setting will be set for all of the accounts that are being created during the time that this is set. So as long as you set this up first, then all the email, all the parent accounts will have that notification setting on in their accounts by default. They could still alter them after that point. They could still turn them off, for instance, but this will set up a default for them upon import.
Okay, and I think that pretty much covers your options for creating parent accounts and the system settings and permission settings that you'll want to consider when you're first setting that up.
Cool.
And we can see how we're doing on this agenda.
Looks pretty good. I think we hit all of these guys.
We covered these.
Notable permissions, the emails, absolutely the
Covered
most
that.
important one.
Yep. Grade
Got
views, student privacy.
Absolutely. Oh, then this takes us to parent building associations.
Take it away, Bradley.
I'll take this one. So sometimes, let me just jump into my account here. When you add users to the system, they are all going to be associated to some building. If you are in a district, they may be just associated to the district level building, or they may be associated to the building that their child is in. For instance, let me go over to roles in advance here. This is where we can see school associations, and I'll click on the top and filter on parent here. There we go. See, a lot of these parents are associated with the elementary school. Now, if I am a parent and I use an access code, I will automatically be placed in the same school building as my child is in, okay? If you import the parents, you can decide which building you want to put them in. They don't actually have to be in the same building as the child. The only reason building associations, correct building mapping is important is that as a parent here, in my own account, let me flip over to Melanie's own account, I will get the notifications for the buildings that I am in, right? And I could possibly see upcoming events for those in my own account. Now, even if I was in a separate building here, let's say I'm associated with the elementary school, but I also have a child in the high school, I would actually still see updates from the high school in that parent email digest. Or I would see them when I toggled to my child's account. I would see the updates that were to their specific building. So that building association doesn't matter too much. The challenge with building associations has been that if I was originally in elementary school, and I created my own account, when my child moves from the elementary school to the junior high, well, I'm going to still be in the elementary school. That's where my account was made. My account doesn't automatically move. So what you would need to do in these situations is, or probably the most practical thing to do, is to export the parents and the students and then map them back together by their associations. Carry over the building association. It's one of the options in an export file, and then re-import the parent files to simply upload or update that one field. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that is easy Excel work. You have to know your way around Excel to do matches across all of those sheets. So let me provide an alternate way of doing this as well. This is what I know at least one of our clients who does this. In Schoology, they actually came down here to the schools area and made a parent school. It's called the parent community building. And they just move all of their parents into that building. That way, they just never have to worry about updating them year over year and to make sure they're in the same building as their child, because again, as I said, they're always going to see the updates from the buildings their children are in anyway, and this simplifies that work. Or parents could just be in the district level building as well. The easiest way to do that, if you don't want to mess with Excel at all, is in Edit Users, filter on your parents. Actually, first go over to Roles in Advance, then filter on your parents, select them, and change their school into a parent academy, something like that. that greatly simplifies the process. Now, that may not be the direction all of you want to go. It may not be the right solution for all of you, but it's certainly a more simple way of thinking about where the parents should live, what building they should live in. So that's my sort of alternate tip. Sometimes like thinking about using Schoology in maybe different ways to make life simpler instead of having to work in Excel to make that happen. This pretty much gets you to the same result. I'd be curious to see if any of you on the line today have tried other kinds of techniques. Okay. All right. Now we get to talk about teacher practices. We'll wrap up talking about messaging parents, the two-way communication between teacher and parents within the courses, and then we'll talk about adding parents to groups and things like that. But before we do that, before we get too far away from talking about grading, I've seen a lot of posts in the community forums and such about overdue notifications. How many of you are using the parent portal but are not super happy about items that are overdue? I'll set up an example right here while we're talking, and just type in the chat if you've experienced that challenge of parents being upset about items that are marked overdue. Sometimes they're not actually overdue, but Schoology is saying they're overdue. Kira, are we seeing anything?
Yep. We got a yep and a yes.
Overdue example. So here's my overdue example. Let's say that this was due on Monday. I'm really, unfortunately, setting up my students for failure here right out of the gate. So not a good practice to set your due date in the past, but we'll do it for this example. All right, so that is in the past, and none of my students have added anything. When I refresh here, I see we have an overdue item in the parent portal, and my parent would have received a note in their email digest also noting that something was overdue. The challenge with overdue issues are, I bet some people have written this, that either it's overdue, but was maybe an optional assignment, or maybe it's just worth 1 point, so like a journal. So it may not be worth it for the student to go back, and these overdue notifications just pile up all year. The other scenario is, well, this item was supposed to be handed in on homework. I'm just putting the assignment in Schoology, but now everything is overdue all the time. So this is for Eric, Brian, John, Kim, Jeff, and Jennifer out there. This is a challenge with teacher training and understanding what actually turns an item overdue. And some of you, I'm sure your teachers already know how to do this, but maybe it's just a couple of extra clicks and it might be easy to forget. So going into Kylie Star, here, let's go to that overdue item, popping into my calendar here. There it is. Let's take the first scenario, in which some of my students may have handed this in on paper, actually, let's break this scenario down even more granularly. Let's say that this was explicitly to be handed in on paper, or maybe the assignment was simply debate prep. There was nothing to hand in. By default, all assignments have submissions enabled. They're always enabled. There's no way to just turn it off by default, which is a feature request I've seen before, which is not a terrible idea, but that's not a thing at this point. Disabling the submissions automatically will make that overdue notification go away. So that's a setup process. The overdue notification is gone. Now there are a few other scenarios. Let me go back here. There are a few other scenarios as well, and you don't necessarily need to know all the specifics, all the scenarios, even though I'll go over them. The big scenario here or the big takeaway is, if technically a student cannot submit something in Schoology, they will not get an overdue notification. So one way a student would be prevented from turning something in is by disabling the submissions. Now, let's say this is just past due and you have a no late policy. Does anyone on the line have a no late work policy? This is very, very common in colleges, but it's now a bit more nuanced in K-12. There's more and more emphasis or more trends to accept work at any time. Yeah, some people try to have them, but there's some leniency there. Now, if something is simply late and after a couple of days you're not accepting any more submissions, or simply some people turned it in on paper, some submitted it in Schoology, your best friend is locking. Locking is one of my favorite features that I don't see people use a lot. It's similar to disabling submissions, but what this does is actually simply lock the Dropbox. Okay, so if I go back to my, I think I have another account here. Oh, okay, so this is Angela's account. Not in the parent view anymore. This is actually the real student account. And let's look. Here's the overdue example. Now that this is locked, it retains a submissions area. So if you made 1 or 2 submissions, they'd be listed here, but it takes away the submit button. That button is gone. It's locked. So the locking feature will also remove any overdue notification. And I think that's my preferred way of doing it, is locking assignments. And it may be a lot, or may seem like a lot to set up, but let me show you the trick here. Back to my teacher account. There's our example. Instead of always having to think to go back to the assignment and then lock it, well, when you first set a due date up here, you can schedule it to lock right afterwards. So let's say this locks the next day at the beginning of school. Okay? And then that'll take care of it for you. You don't have to worry about it after that. That's another way. Now, the final way to get rid of those overdue notifications is to simply enter a grade. Let's say that this invention homework here was overdue. Entering zeros for people helps, but do you want to go through 10 students and add zeros? Kira, I never really like to, as a child and grandchild of all teachers everywhere, the last thing I want to do is add yet another thing of work to the plate. So even though I can put in a 0 here, let me show you another shortcut. Click this menu next to the item, and then you can mark all those cells as incomplete or missing. And selecting missing, that will actually set a 0 in all of the columns. Once I have a 0, the overdue notifications will go away because there's been a grade placed there. Some people do prefer instead marking all of those cells as incomplete. I believe if it's incomplete, that overdue notification will still be there. It's basically that reminder to turn something in, whereas missing is really a hardline 0. You can always change that. You can remove the missing and add a grade if something did get turned in. But that's the best way to do it. All right. So if there are no questions about the overdue notifications, I'd like to talk about messaging. But are we good to move on?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So once you have parents in the system, Angela, her father and mother are in here. If there's a parent associated with the child. You will see them listed in the members list. Clicking on the gear icon, we have a new option, not only to message the student, but now I have an option to directly message her parents in the platform. So I don't need to keep track of their emails or anything like that. I can just stay in Schoology and message from here. Now, one thing to note, if you have multiple parents or guardians in the system for a single student, messaging them this way will be like a reply all. So the two parents will see each other in that conversation thread and will see each other's responses, which may be the desired outcome, or it may not be. Just something to be cognizant of. You can always remove one of them and message them separately, send two different messages, also fine. I like this because I still have those options to add files or links and things like that. So if I wanted to share something with them, like a permission slip or a work sample, something like that, I can do it. Now let's say this is high school literature, American literature, and we're reading Catcher in the Rye, and maybe we need to get a permission slip or a note sent home to guarantee the parents know that the children are reading something with adult language. So I want to message all of my parents at once. The key to that is clicking the course options dropdown and using this option, send message. That's how you can message your whole class, for instance. But in this case, I can also flip over to parents. And this will, again, send a message within Schoology to all the parents all at once. This is not a reply all situation. This will be an individual email to each parent. So if they respond to that, it will just only go to you and not the other parents. One thing that I really like, Kira, about this whole messaging platform was something we changed. I want to say we changed it sometime last year. About this time last year, I think. It was before that these would, by default, direct messages like this always go to someone's email. Okay, so that you get an email notification with the content of the message. And for the last year, if I get a message in my Gmail account that someone sent me through Schoology, I can literally just reply to the email, and it will send that message back into Schoology, back to the teacher. So that parent actually, when they receive this message, they actually don't need to go log into Schoology to reply. They can just reply to the email, and it will be added to the message thread in Schoology. So I really like that, and it's one of the reasons to have parents sign up with their email addresses so you have a tighter communication line there. In the course, we showed you earlier how the course looks to parents, but we had a fake parent account loaded up here. As a teacher, you can also see what it looks like to them. Clicking course options again, I select view course as. This is a feature that most of you are probably familiar with that allows me to see my course exactly like one of these students, like Angela. But notice if you have parents involved, there's a parent link here, and I can also load up my course exactly as how Melanie sees it. All right? It's exactly my course according to Melanie's view. This not only is terrific for just troubleshooting things, but it also allows me to load up Schoology like this at a parent-teacher conference and show Melanie Angela's work from the exact same view Melanie would see. So I don't accidentally show submissions from other students while just trying to get to her work. Good way to go. And the grades, all of that will respect my settings. So notice I have individual grades here in the grade report, but there's no final grade because that in the gradebook settings, we turned off the final grades earlier in this presentation. Beyond all the features and functionalities we've been talking about, Kira, you and I talked, since you all taught kindergarten and high school, you have just this kind of wide, super wide range of experience. And you shared with me the idea of creating a parent folder, actually curating information specifically for parents, especially for children in younger grades. And I just love that idea of having a parent folder, having a folder for every month where you'd put things like newsletters, things like that. So even if I was a parent, maybe even late to the district, enrolling late, maybe we just moved, when I join the course and let's say my daughter is going to first grade, I can go back through all of the newsletters for the year and kind of get caught up on the vibe of the classroom, get to know the teacher through these newsletters. It's a great place to have an archive. And beyond that, remember the parent can see anything that the child is seeing. So here's a kind of creative use of all of these features together. Here's a page. This is where Angela's education plan is. If we edit this, note that this page is individually assigned to Angela. Only Angela and her parents will see the contents of this page. This is an example we whipped up in this morning's webinar. If I wanted to list her goals and put it in that parent folder, I can still differentiate what the different parents are seeing, individually assigning pages. And if you're thinking to yourself, I didn't know you could do that, you are right. This is actually a new functionality as of this summer, the ability to individualize just pages, not just assignments and discussions and tests. But now you can assign a page to that child. Okay? So if I jumped over to Angela's parent again and looked at this view, we would see that her parent can see that individually assigned page. No one else would see that page. Okay? And as her parent, probably the last thing I would wrap up with course communication is note that this little feature on the right-hand side. Parents actually have a direct message box there, so I can get in touch with my daughter's teacher really, really easily with very few clicks this way. So our final bit for communication, I'm going to wrap up here, and for those, we have about 45 people on the line right now. If you are seeing this, if your ears are burning, for those veterans I see on the line right now, if you have something you would like to share with us and bring to the floor, as long as you have a mic, click the little hand raising button and go to webinar, and I'll see you there, and I'll give you the mic if you want to share any practices that you've implemented at your school, or share any stories about something that's really worked for you, or maybe even some kind of implementation question you have regarding parents, and we'll take those live on the mic if you have them. Of course, it's the end of the day, and I know you all are also a quiet bunch. Great. I see Jennifer there, and I'll see if any other hands come up. Okay, our last bit here. Remember why I started talking off with, or actually Kira started talking off with associations, that Melanie is really associated with her children. The good news is that she also has her own Schoology account, which can be leveraged in lots of different ways. She could be taking an adult education class in Schoology that the school offers. More commonly, what you will see are parents using their own account to join Schoology groups, like a organization, so they can actually engage in Schoology themselves, not just be a viewer, but really get engaged. We had, remember that story, Kira, this morning about the parent who got in touch with the principal, and she created her own Schoology group for the chess club with the principal. So sometimes we see parents just really jumping in with both feet, using Schoology groups and actually embracing their own account. And some people on the line might have stories of that as well. Do you have anything to share on that or from the questions before I open up the line?
I'm good. I'm ready to hear.
Great. So Jennifer, I'm going to unmute you here. Great to have you. The mic should be on right now. What can you share with us today? How are parents working in your district?
Well, so we set up at our open house, we set it up so that we set up probably a whole computer cart's worth of computers in our library. And then before open house and after open house, we had a session for parents to come in and get their access codes. And then the teachers themselves, we helped the parents log in, and it sort of fostered a good communication between the teachers and the parents, gave some of the teachers who were a little weak in Schoology a chance to look like they were experts and become a little more expert with it. And the feedback we got was it was completely successful. A lot of our parents had gone home last year when we were still basic, and they were sometimes confused about how to log in, and this kind of settled all of that. And so the parent who clicked that they were a student and made that mistake, we were able to settle that problem while we were there, and it was a really great experience for everybody.
That's very cool. And that was a similar theme to this morning, that the overwhelming success that face-to-face that FaceTime has with getting parents signed up rather than mailing something home. That any where do I click, where do I put in this code, all those answers are given and can be given right there. And I really like that you add this nuance that it sounds like in an unexpected way, teachers some confidence as well.
Yeah. And
then gave them this opportunity to connect with the parent, not even on not even about their child's grades, but hey, how does that? Do you know how to use one of these smartphones?
Yep, exactly.
Very cool, Jennifer. Bob, I see you on the line. I'm going to pass the mic over to you, my friend.
Hey, Brad, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself, sir?
I'm doing great, thanks. Good to be with all of you. Following Keith Sorensen's advice from last year, I used his methodology to create a merge document and send the access codes out to all of our parents via email. And then as an attachment to that email was a short PDF explaining how to create your account and where the access code goes. Taking that a step further, our SIS system is Infinite Campus, and we've learned that there's some customizable fields in there for parents that access the SIS portal. And next year we will have the Schoology code occupy one of those fields. So when they go into their SIS portal, they will see the Schoology code there. And then I like Jennifer's plan of supplementing that with face-to-face sort of support at open house.
Very cool. That idea of putting that access code where the parents are already used to going, that certainly is one way to do it. Why teach them to go somewhere else just to get them logged in? Go back to that place they're already used to.
Yeah, ultimately is for us to have a single sign-on for students, parents, and our staff, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah, that kind of data goal is absolutely ambitious, but worth shooting for. Very cool, Bob. Eduardo, I'm going to give you the mic, sir. Here you go. You should be unmuted now.
Hey, Brad. Hey, everyone.
Hi. How you doing today?
And I'm doing well.
Awesome.
Sunny California.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So we've been using the parent codes as well, and I think Rob just before me, right? So we also have Infinite Campus, and we have built a custom integration. One of the things that we do, how we share those access codes, is that we use the Schoology API, and as we create student accounts, we retrieve the access code through the API and push it to Infinite Campus into their custom tab. So that's actually how we provide those access codes. And we have created documentation as well that we post on our website on how we retrieve all that information. We also do quite a few of, as Jennifer mentioned, there's back to school nights, and we do trainings as well for low-income families. And we have received positive feedback on for those, especially those families, on just stay on track of what the students are doing. Some of the options, they are very powerful to them. Those parents are. We showcase the Schoology mobile app as well. that they love, especially for the low-income families. Mostly may not have a computer, but they always have a phone for some reason.
Absolutely.
And down below, at the foot or Schoology, you can switch languages. So typically they'll move to Spanish, but that's a powerful tool for them. One of the things, and there are creative ways that we say, using Schoology groups, and of course, you, on your dinner table to have more engaging conversation with your students or your children versus the single answer back, hey, how was your day? Fine. You can actually probe on some of the topics there, maybe they're talking at school that may invoke some emotions. One of the things, Brad, I want to mention that we get quite a few questions about that is if you have more than one child associated and you go into your drop down to switch into your parent, children view, for you, the issue here is like if a child has a long name, click on the next arrow, if you could, please, on the one that you switch between your account and the children accounts.
This one?
Yeah. So we typically have this question, hey, I'm associated with both children, but I can only see one. So because when they come here, and if the child has a long name, so Schoology appends all in here, and they don't see the other name. So it's a common question that we receive, and we, just to point this out, we say, if you're associated, just click in there, and then once you click on that name, even if it's just the first, you should get a drop down with all of your children.
That's a really great point that a long name will get sucked off the page, but that they are still both there. That's a great point. Eduardo, I'm curious, when you show, I love the idea of mobile. I think with parents, we should have this philosophy of mobile first, because even if you don't, even if you are in a low income area, you're in an internet desert, there's no Wi-Fi at home, something like that, you're absolutely correct that more and more you're seeing people have internet only on their cell phone for whatever reason, or even if they don't have a data plan, they still have their cell phone on them and can connect to hotspots. For instance, even with like an iPod Touch has Wi-Fi, right? So I think absolutely mobile is a great way to go. With translating Schoology, I'm curious, these translation parts, they translate the platform, but they don't translate the content of the course that the teacher has created. Are you also educating those parents on how to use things like Google Translate or any of the other translation engines to help them dig into the language?
We do mention, and funny enough, we just added the Google Translate to our website, the district website. But we do mention those are services that they can use, and typically depending on the level of support from the district-wide as well, important messages must be sent in both English and Spanish. So they do receive, and as you pointed out, we do recommend if you have any questions, message the teacher, ask questions, get in touch with the school. But we do point that out.
Thank you, Eduardo. That's really super valuable information. Let's see. Eleanor, can you type in chat if you're still here and if you want to share something? Eleanor, I'm going to unmute you here, and everyone should be able to hear you now.
I want to talk about groups. We love the features of the groups for Schoology, and we have a lot of open public groups that we use. One of our issues is getting parents to join the groups. We find that we had to create a document with all the group codes, and then they're able to just go to that document, find the group code, and then join the group. But is there any other easier way for parents to be able to see all the public groups that are available and then just click the join button?
That is a great question. So I'm going to share with you what another client does. It's a very interesting model. Let's jump over to, let's see which one of my teachers has this. So when you set up a group, let's say the women's soccer group. All groups have privacy settings, as you're probably aware. I know, and they're usually locked down a fair amount, especially for faculty groups and things like that. And you'll notice I have locks over here. Are some places that make their groups completely public. In other words, open to everyone, meaning that they actually never have to join it. They never have to go in. They can just navigate to the group or bookmark it or simply click a link from your website and go into that group. Now, doing something like that does take some communication because you would have to go into your system settings, go into your privacy overrides, and open this all the way up here. Oh, that's the wrong one. Let's go down to our groups. And they actually open up everything to this everyone level all the way. And that would allow them to see anything. I'm actually in a demo account right now that has this lockdown, so I can't change it where I am. But you would be able to do that. Now, as you might be imagining, Eleanor, that would mean that when other people create groups, they could be made inadvertently public to everyone. So the places I know who have this kind of strategy to make fully public groups that don't require login, they are also not allowing individual teachers to make groups. Instead, what they've done is created like a Google form to request groups so that the Schoology administrator judiciously sets up groups and makes sure that they have the right privacy settings before they release them.
So you're saying that at the administration level, we can create it for everyone, but then when people create groups like teachers, they have to remember to make the permissions more secure, but there's no backwards way to do that. We can't make the school-wide secure, and then when someone creates an individual group, make it for everyone.
Correct, because that's absolutely the concept. Because this area, in this screen is called privacy overrides. I actually like the word threshold a little bit more, that this guarantees that no one can accidentally make something more public than you intended. So it doesn't work the other way around, which is why a lot of people set up some sort of formal request process for groups to be created so that you yourself could be in charge of making them so that someone doesn't accidentally make, let's say, a faculty group with all of the math exams completely public.
Okay, we like that idea. Thank you so much.
Cool, and I believe it's, if you look at Cherry Creek's website, I believe you'll find some of their totally public parent groups as well. Great. So let's jump to Kim. Kim, I'm going to unmute you here. I believe you're still there. I hear you.
Okay.
What can you share with us?
Well, let's see. We use parents quite a bit, and we have from day one. So we kind of have them in, and we have them create their own accounts. We wanted them to be responsible for updating their emails. It is sometimes challenging to get them all connected, but we're at a pretty high percentage now. We use group. Pardon me?
What do you think your percentage is if you were to ballpark it?
I think that the different buildings you're going to see different percentages. I think in the lower grades we're more at like an 80% because the parents are 80 to 90% because the teachers have been really, when they come in for parent conferences, they have the papers laying there for how to create the account. Sometimes they'll even take them through the process, together, or the principal will. So I think we're much higher in the lower grades, and then as you get into middle and high, we drop that number down a little bit. But I'd also attribute that to being 3 years in. So I think, like as these younger kids get on lower, those parents will ride up through, and I think you'll see our numbers increase each year as those kids grow up through the system.
Cool. Do you think that's one of the best ways to? There are a lot of comments that question the idea of how, even with all this stuff, how well they're actually going to be able to get parents in. And do you think that FaceTime in a parent conference situation is the best method?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think you'll have your early adopters where you send out forms. That's what we experienced was we had a lot of people on there at first, and then, kind of our, like I said, our early adopters. Then you had people who were a little bit more timid with technology, who needed more of that one-on-one, that help to sit down with someone and do it. I think that as our teachers started to use it more, and that was the place that parents had to go to get information, that also increased participation, because if they knew they could still get the information in a printed newsletter coming home or an email, it wasn't as imperative that they be in the system. As our teachers started using just literally the discussions and test quizzes and assignments, and they found out they could go in and see things, like it's just been a process of more and more parent connections and use, because our teachers are using it more. And they've created a lot of parent groups. At our middle school level, it's been really good too, because they're on teams. So the whole team creates a group, and then all the parents join that team. And then what's nice is, because if you're viewing as a parent, when a teacher makes an update in a course that the student is connected to, the parent doesn't necessarily get that update. I mean, they can go in and look, but they don't get necessarily an update. But if they're in a group and the teacher posts, then because they're connected to that group as a parent, they receive that update. And so a lot of our parents join the groups because they love getting information like that.
And Kim, I think that's a really great distinction of those things that we looked at, the difference between a parent viewing their child and being able to see that information directly through proactively logging in or getting the email digest, versus themselves actually being a member of a group and using their account very actively in that regard. Do you have any parents that use Schoology groups or members of Schoology groups for like athletics teams that they may be coaching on or anything like that?
Yes. So all of our clubs and activities and sports also have groups. And now we've started where I think parents are getting more comfortable. So I had a parent want to create a group for the chess club at one of our K2 buildings the other day. So, we created the group, put her in there as an admin with the principal in there as an admin too, so they can, kind of oversee it. And so we now have parents who are starting to create groups to help share information among themselves. We have PTA, groups set up, and our coaches, it's great. I'm a cross-country parent, so I love it because they post course maps and different things in there, and time the bus will be there. And so we jumped off the cliff when we started using it. We are all in. We're using it for almost every piece of the way we communicate in our districts. So
very cool, Kim. I love all those ideas. Thank you for sharing that.
And we do have our teachers separate. You had asked about that before. We have our teachers they have an account for their teacher role, and then we have them create their own parent account from a home email address, because we view it as you really do function as two different roles. I mean, you are an employee, but you are also a parent, and then we have them link those accounts together to make it more convenient for them to switch between. But we want them to function as a parent through their own account, their own personal email, and then as a teacher, through the account we create for them, their single sign-on.
Kim, that's a really interesting point, because we did show earlier that a teacher can use her same account and still add a child, but you all decided to not go that route and have different accounts and just have them literally linked. Does that also help so that your professional Schoology work is maybe going to your work email, and your parent Schoology interactions are maybe going to your personal Gmail account?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the way we view it. We even have a board member who has children in the district. So we have our board members, they have accounts through the district as their board role, and then they have created their own parent accounts using their home email, you know what I mean?
Right.
So we just keep it very separate, because you function separately as an employee and as a parent.
Great. That's a great advice and a totally different way to think about that. And to give some people who are listening to these ideas, just to give them a sense of where you're coming from, could you share where your school is and about how big it is, about how many students, ballpark?
Sure. We are in North Canton, Ohio. So we're in Northeast Ohio. Go Tribe, by the way. We have to have that because we have the Browns, so just pardon me for that. But anyway, we are about 4,700 students district-wide. We have a high school, a middle school, 2 3 through 5 buildings, and 2 K2 buildings, and an early childhood center. So we are all on. We have a one-to-one district-wide with Chromebooks. We use Schoology as our LMS, and then we use eSchool. We just now picked up eSchool Plus as our SIS and made that connection. So.
Oh, great. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Kim. I love that story, and thank you for sharing it with everybody.